Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Moore. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I just wanted to start today's show by saying congratulations to you. Yes, you, Tony, for having as many receptions and yards as the 2024 Penn State Nittany Lions wide receiver corps had in the Orange Bowl. Very impressive for you to match an entire unit in terms of production in a college football playoff semifinal. Great work by you. Any new NIL deals you'd like to announce?
Well, we don't have them quite signed just yet, but we are efforting. I do want to mention, you mentioned the lack of yards for receptions. Let's give Harrison Wallace some credit in this one for Penn State wide receiver. He did not have a catch, but he did have negative 3 yards in receiving based on the throw it around at the end of the game trying to score. Drew Aller also negative 4 yards receiving in this game. Neither of those guys. So not only did I have as many catches as the Penn State wide receivers, I actually had more yards than they did, 3 more yards than the entirety of the Penn State wide receivers. So, does that mean I'm looking to play for Drew Aller next year? No, but I could.
Yeah, boy. I know this is the rewatch show for the Notre Dame Penn State game. And really, obviously, the reason we're doing this is because we're here to talk about Notre Dame and what this game could mean in terms of the Ohio State Notre Dame National Championship game. Tony, I keep seeing stuff about Drew Aller being a first-round pick in the NFL. And I know that, Tony, we share a state with the Cleveland Browns. We know there are some absolute morons working in professional football, but walk me through Drew Aller is a first-round pick. We just watched a whole game, big stage, fantastic. I understand his wide receivers aren't great. Walk me through Drew Aller is going to be a first-round pick in any draft ever.
I can't, because the Drew Aller that we saw in this game is basically the Drew Aller we've seen in every Ohio State game in one form or fashion. I made a comment on Twitter, like, where are the draft nicks now on this Drew Aller stuff? And somebody responded saying, well, he from time to time, he will make a throw that only he can make. And I'm like, well, that's true. Are you saying this is a good thing or a bad thing? Because I'm not sure what you're talking about. I've never seen him make a throw that others can't. I see him make some odd throws. Again, let's see what he has, what he could do with some legitimate wide receivers. We've never been able to see that with him. So maybe the jury is still out, but overwhelming evidence suggests, if you know what I mean, that we know what the jury's going to say.
Yeah, I think, boy, he got bailed out. There was a couple cases of jury nullification where he threw some unbelievably bad picks. Like, you would scream at a high school freshman for throwing those picks, and he got bailed out. One of them was a defensive holding call on Christian Gray. One of them was a pass interference call on Schuler, I think. But they were both like, what are you seeing? Like, walk me through what you were seeing on this play. And then at the end of the game, the classic, Tony, it's the textbook throw that everyone tells you to make. You want to go late across the middle, back across your body. You want to kind of loft it real high there. I remember Bill Walsh telling Joe Montana, here's what I want you to do. I want you to throw it late across the middle, kind of over, across your body. Don't get a lot on it. Just sort of hang that up there. That's where the money is. And boy, he, I don't know if that's a throw only he can make. I know that that's only a throw that only he will make or did make, because, oh boy, life is full of choices, Tony. All right, we got to stop talking about Penn State, at least for a little while, because we got to talk a little bit about Notre Dame. This was the game where Notre Dame, we got to start with the offensive line, because this was the game where Notre Dame lost starting left tackle Anthony Knapp. They lost their right guard as well. Jagaza went in at right guard. We've talked about him a little bit already. Tosh Baker, a senior with virtually no experience. He's a senior, backup left tackle, goes in for Anthony Knapp at left tackle. He gives up a huge blindside hit to deny Dennis Sutton that forced a fumble right before the half. Notre Dame was very lucky to get that one back. I look at this. I look at this, and we have seen this. We've watched a team go through losing multiple starters, and you throw a veteran guy in there at left tackle, like as a, well, let's see if this works. And, in Ohio State's case, it was Zen Mahalski who they threw in when Josh Simmons went down with an injury, and that extraordinarily did not work for Ohio State. Now Zen Mahalski's in the transfer portal, and Donovan Jackson is playing left tackle. I looked at Tosh Baker, and it's like, well, I don't know the Notre Dame depth chart well enough to know whether they have a right guard that can go in and play right guard, or is Rocco Spindler going to be good to play in this game? I mean, that one seemed a little more up in the air. Anthony Knapp is out for this one. We know that. If Rocco Spindler can play right guard, Charles Jagaza was originally slotted in as the starting left tackle. Mm-hmm. I feel like watching Tosh Baker, I go, well, I think, I have no inside information on whether Charles Jagaza is in any kind of shape to play left tackle, but I feel like I don't like the matchup of JT Tuimoloau versus Tosh Baker at left tackle for Notre Dame. And we can talk about right tackle in a minute, because I don't like that matchup either. It feels like Notre Dame's in a spot where it's not going to be like, what's the best answer here? It's going to be, what's the least bad answer here? Because I think the great answers are out the window and the good answers are out the window. And now it's like, what can we do with what we've got right now?
100%. You're just trying to stay above water and really just keep a hand above water so somebody can see you and throw you a ring or something, because they don't have good options. And I think if Rocco Spindler can go, I've seen speculation that it would be Jagaza who will go at left tackle, just because the potential is better there than Tosh Baker. But either way, you're putting in somebody who hasn't played there this year in terms of Jagaza, who's been, I think a torn pec in camp is what cost him the season. And he just played in this game against Penn State. That was his first action back. He'd been practicing for a few weeks, came back slowly, and then was like, well, you got to go in. And he did have some good moments. But yeah, whether it's him or Baker at left tackle, like that's less than ideal. That's bad. It's scary for Notre Dame. And yet, this was also a game where right tackle Emil Wagner struggled against Abdul Carter. And we saw Donovan Jackson struggle against Abdul Carter, but it was his first game at left tackle. That's a little bit understandable. And it wasn't just Abdul Carter. It was denied Dennis Sutton, who was getting around him as well. So this, to me, watching this offensive line and these tackles pass blocking, boy, the red alert on what Ohio State's defensive ends could do in this game. And they're going to have to operate knowing that Notre Dame's going to have to operate knowing that Riley Skinner's not going to have a lot of time. So you're talking short passes, one read and take off upfield. Like, you're not going to have a lot of time to just stand back there. I'm interested to see how Ohio State, whether they even need to blitz in order to speed things up, or if Riley, Leonard, and the tackles are going to be sped up all by themselves just with the front four. So yeah, watching these tackles in this game, we finally got to see the potential lineup for the Notre Dame offensive line. And Penn State got to the quarterbacks. They sacked him 5 times and could have gotten Riley Leonard a couple more times. I think one time he got back to the line of scrimmage. So this was not a great day for the Notre Dame offensive line. And I think Penn State's defensive line is a good idea of what an Ohio State pass rush is going to look like too.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Emil Wagner, and we have watched 3 games now. In the first game, you really didn't notice him, which for a tackle is like, oh, that's good. That's what you want out of a tackle. And the second game was like, you saw him a couple times. And this one was like, oh boy, speed rush outside by Abdul Carter, where it wasn't a sack, but he hit Riley Leonard and forced an incompletion. There was a really, really bad and obvious hold on the edge where Abdul Carter's like completely blasting right around him, and he's just hanging on for dear life that one didn't get called, but then gave up a sack a couple plays later. And I think the biggest thing to me was, okay, yeah, we kind of know what the tackles are, and it's a little bit of a concern. The interior of the Penn State defensive line got a lot of pressure. They were very active in the backfield and run plays. I think that the defensive tackles got at least a sack or maybe two. It was one where it was kind of coming from all over. It wasn't just, well, this one guy is having a tough time and you can maybe help him out with a running back or a tight end on that side of the formation. It was kind of coming from all over. And that's a concern to me, because if Notre Dame can't run the ball, like this was a great example of how Notre Dame looks when they can run the ball, and that was the second half. And if they can run the ball, boy, they look really good. If they can't run the ball, then it's the first half, and then it is just a bunch of 3-and-outs, and it's a bunch of, there's not a lot of nothing to wide receivers, a bunch of stuff, kind of check downs to Mitchell Evans, kind of passes. You're not going to be able to do that against Ohio State. You're not going to get anywhere doing that against Ohio State. So they're going to have to find a way to either be able to run the ball more consistently, and they were 2.8 yards per carry in this game, which is not good at all. Riley Leonard, sure, the Riley Leonard thing will work in the way that the Quinn Ewers scrambles worked, where he picked up a couple first downs. That's fine. You can't rely on Riley Leonard to run the ball 27 times. And Jeremiah Love had an okay second half, but not great. They had Aeneas Williams had 2 rushes for 17 yards. He had a 15-yard run, one play after he had a 35-yard reception, and then or 36-yard reception, and then you didn't see him again. It was like, where did he go? You picked up 50 yards in 2 plays with him, and then you didn't really see him again. And Jadarian Price comes in. He has a long of 12 and finishes with 7 rushes for 13 yards. So a long of 12 and then 6 rushes for 1 yard for the rest of his day. And there's no consistency there. There's no, you can pick up a first down, and Mitchell Evans had a really nice day, and he had 5 catches for 58 yards. Aeneas Williams had 5 for 66, including the 36-yarder. But really, it was Jaden Greathouse was the guy who made all the plays, and his big play, more than half of his yards came in a play where 2 different Penn State defensive backs fell down. That doesn't feel like that's going to be a sustainable recipe. If 2 defensive backs fall down on every play, you're going to have a great day on offense. I don't think you can rely on that. And he kind of made the second guy fall down. The second guy, lost his footing. The first guy, he was open because the cornerback started backpedaling and just tripped. And that's fine, but that's like relying on Ohio State to stop their running game because Will Howard trips over his own feet. That might work once, that doesn't work all game long. So this is 3 games now where I come away kind of going, I'm not sure where the points are here. I mean, they're going to score. They'll score 14 points. They'll score 17 points, something like that. I don't know where 24 points are. I don't know where 31 points are, unless they can do it on special teams or on defense. I don't know how this offense gets out of the teens.
They need a bunch of help, and Ohio State's not above giving them help, but they need it. And if Ohio State doesn't give it to them, good luck. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, who are their top 2 running backs, as you said, they combined for 18 carries for 59 yards in this one. And of those 18 carries, I believe 5 went for more than 5 yards. And there's just not a lot there. And so then, Tom, the reason I was a little bit late to recording tonight is because I was charting all of the rushes in the playoffs for Notre Dame by yards. And so Jeremiah Love has 25 carries in the 3 games. Of those 25 carries, 14 have gone for 3 yards or less. And Jadarian Price has 28 carries in these 3 games. 19 of those have gone for 3 yards or less. So 33 of their 53 carries in the playoffs have gone for 3 yards or less. This is not, if that 98-yarder wasn't there against Indiana, which was the second carry among all of these running backs, the production would be much, much worse, obviously. But all of these guys, just Jeremiah Love in this one, his carries were 5, 1, 4, 6, 9, 9. Those are all in a row. Then 3, 4, 2, 2, 1. The Price was -4, 12, 1, 2, -2, -4, and 8. Like the consistency is the inability to get yards. However, Tom, if you look at this game, they were 11 of 17 on third downs, which is good. That's a number that you can win with. They were 8 of 8 on third downs of 3 yards or less. They were 2 of 7 on 6 yards or more. So they will just bleed you and get you, just grind you out so that they can have a 3rd and 3, and then Riley Leonard will just go pick it up, and then they'll do it again. And they don't care. They are energy vampires.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. This is going to be a week where you hear us talk about getting Notre Dame off schedule a lot, because if Notre Dame stays on schedule, which is you pick up 4 yards or more on first down, you pick up half of what you need on second down, and you convert on third down. If Notre Dame stays on schedule, they pick up 4 yards on first down, 3 yards on second down, 3 yards on third down, boom, move the chains. If Notre Dame's in 3rd and 3, it's going to be Riley Leonard. He's going to pick it up, and then you're going to have to do it again. If you get them behind the chains, you get them out of their comfort zone. They don't want to have to throw the ball. They certainly don't want to have to throw the ball down the field. We've seen them throw the ball down the field a handful of times in 3 games. Really almost never. If they have to throw the ball down the field, it really doesn't go well for them very often. It's really going to be all about keeping them. Can they stay on schedule, or do you get them behind the sticks? If you get them behind the sticks, it's going to be, you're very, very likely to end up with a punt on that set of downs. If it's 3rd and 2, just assume you're going to have to do it again.
Yeah. Yep. And if it's 3rd and long, you got a pretty decent shot at an interception based on what Riley Leonard will do. So, this is going to be one of those, kind of frustrating games. And also, while we're talking about the kind of the inside things that will determine this, all 4 of Notre Dame's punts landed inside the 20. So great job by their punter on doing his job and creating a long field for the Penn State offense.
Yeah, the Notre Dame special teams have been very good. They've been very creative. They were pretty aggressive on an early punt, trying to come after one from Penn State. They didn't get it, but you can see them trying to make stuff happen in special teams. And it's a team that needs to make stuff happen in special teams, because they've got to steal a possession somewhere. They've got to steal points somewhere. They've got to hand their offense a short field. They have to, if everyone I've said this before, but if everyone just plays a B+ game, Ohio State's going to win by 10 to 14 points. If Notre Dame needs to find an area where, everyone plays A+ or, B+ offense and defense, but Notre Dame wins on special teams and gets a turnover on defense, or steals a possession on special teams. You got to do something like that. Fake field goal, fake punt, whatever it is. They're going to have to make something happen. And I think they know that, and you can tell because they're constantly trying to make stuff happen on defense and on special teams. And, they have the creativity to do it. We've seen them do it, but it's just a question of, can you take advantage of it with Ohio State? And, one of the reasons that you really, if Riley Leonard has to throw the ball, I don't think that's a good thing for Notre Dame at all. I mean, you saw him, he had thrown one, not even a deep throw, kind of like a medium range throw, just sailed one over the middle to a safety. I mean, like the wide receiver jumped, and it was easily a foot over his outstretched hand and right to a safety on the second drive. There was another one in the 4th where he didn't see Deni Dennis Sutton dropping and just threw it. I mean, Deni Dennis Sutton made a nice play, but it was like, you thought there was a window there, but there was not even close to a window there. Like, I think he just didn't see him. And, Will Howard did the same thing against Texas, but Will Howard did it once. He didn't do it twice. And Will Howard's asked to do a lot more in the passing game than Riley Leonard is. So I think that's something that's really going to be a concern. And, Penn State, I don't want to make this a referendum on Penn State, but man, Penn State did a lot to give this game away. I mean, Nick Singleton had a wide open touchdown pass. It would have been a walk-in, and Aller threw it a little low and behind him, and it wasn't a great throw. He had to kind of catch it on his knees a little behind him. Probably should have still caught it, didn't catch it, so they settled for a field goal instead of a touchdown. Aller throws one of the worst picks you've ever seen in your entire life at the end of the game. It was, there were a couple plays that were, you'd love to, if someone makes a great play, like you tip your hat and you move on. There were a couple that were just like, no, this was just like handed to you. And Notre Dame had, there was one where Notre Dame got, I think it was the one where Riley Leonard got blindsided and fumbled the ball, and it was like, I have no idea how Notre Dame came up with the football. They had some incredible fumble luck in this game where it looked for all the world. I think Abdul Carter might have been the guy who was trying to get on it and just didn't have two arms to get it, and Notre Dame offensive lineman was able to wrestle it away from him. But it took everything in Penn State's power to not win this game. And to their credit, they didn't win this game. They followed through and did not win this game. But, we have seen Ohio State play Penn State. And Ohio State, when they played Penn State, I think he gave up 2.3 yards rushing, something like that, per carry. Nick Singleton had 5.6 yards per carry. Katron Allen, 4.3 yards per carry. I mean, this was not just like, for Penn State, when Penn State was playing Ohio State, it was like, well, Tyler Warren had this one kind of crazy play, and other than that, like, no one did anything. Nick Singleton had 3 rushing touchdowns, all in the red zone, all from like 5 to 7 yards out. This wasn't just like a tush push. This was, you opened a running lane in the red zone, and you muscled in there. And that's a little bit of a concern to me as well from the Notre Dame perspective, where if Ohio State's able to kind of control Penn State on the line of scrimmage and really, really dominate Penn State on the line of scrimmage on defense, and then Notre Dame wasn't, I mean, you're not, those units are obviously not going head to head against each other, but just for a game that looks like it's going to be won on the line of scrimmage, Notre Dame was not winning on the defensive side of the ball on the line of scrimmage for decent chunks of the game. And if you have concerns about whether they're going to win on the offensive line, and then you have concerns about whether they're going to win on the defensive line, you can only make so much of that up on special teams.
Yeah, I did. One of my notes on special teams was be wary of a punt block because they're going to come after it. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton combined for 42 yards rushing on 18 carries against Ohio State earlier in the season. In case anybody was out there wondering, I'm just looking where to go here because there are some places. We've talked about Christian Gray, number 29, sophomore cornerback throughout this. He's been attacked. He's been picked on. My understanding is that it happens once again in USC, or not once again, but also happens in the USC game that we're eventually going to try to watch. Probably won't be doing a show on it, but just for some context. But he did come up with the game clinching, or the game saving interception there at the end when Drew Aller made a throw that he shouldn't have. And getting back to Aller, he missed a wheel route from like their own 10-yard line to Nick Singleton that could have gone a long, long way. They missed that one. Penn State is leading it 10-0 at the point of the fumble that you were talking about earlier that Abdul Carter could have came up with. They've knocked Riley Leonard out. Steve Angeli, the backup quarterback, has to come in. And so all of the momentum is with Penn State. And what happens? Notre Dame scores the next 17 points. Like, what? Again, credit to Notre Dame. And this was a question I asked of Ryan Day on Wednesday and also Sonny Styles. In terms of, for Ryan Day, facing a team like Notre Dame, what is the difficulty in facing a team that just finds a way? And he's like, they're going to do everything in their power to scrape and fight. And so you have to be ready for all of that. You have to be prepared for all of the special teams. You've got to protect the ball. You just got to have to be right on so many things. And what Sonny Styles told me is that you have to match their will. And I think that's an important part of this for Ohio State. they're going to have to match Notre Dame's will. They don't have to exceed it because Notre Dame needs a lot in this game. But if Ohio State matches their will, then they're going to exceed them almost everywhere else.
It does feel like a game where if Ohio State gets out to an early lead, Ohio State's going to win comfortably. If Notre Dame is up 10-7 at the end of the first quarter or 13-10 at halftime or whatever, the longer Notre Dame's in it, the more Notre Dame believes that they can win it, and the more Ohio State, who is watching the same film that we are, is going to go, you're going to get a little bit of an uh-oh at some point. We've seen Ohio State overcome some adversity. They were just facing a 1st and goal at the 1 with Texas about to tie the game with about 3 minutes left and got one of the great goal line stands in Ohio State football history out of it, and got made the play to, not only was it one play where you got the strip sack, it was a goal line stand. It was a tackle for loss for 6-7 yards. And then it was another deflected pass. And then it was the sack and forced fumble. So, Ohio State has overcome some adversity and has dealt with difficult situations, pretty well in the recent past. But that's what it's going to take for Notre Dame. If Notre Dame's down 14-3 in the second quarter, this is not going to go well for them. It's maybe you can come back like you did against Penn State, but the challenge against Ohio State is going to be more difficult than the challenge against Penn State because Ohio State has wide receivers who can catch the ball, and Ohio State has a quarterback who is probably going to do fewer dumb things. So, you're not going to get it on quite as you're probably not going to get it handed to you the way that Penn State really tried to hand it to them. One other thing that I had a note on that this has been now a couple times, and it's just been like one snap a game, but another high snap for Notre Dame. The last time it threw off the timing on a play, and they had an opportunity for something and it turned into nothing. This one, it was right before halftime. It was a high snap and led to a sack. And this is one where Abdul Carter's going over right tackle, and it might not have made any difference whether Steve Angeli caught it. It was a great snap and Steve Angeli caught it right where it was supposed to be or not, but it threw the timing off. And this is the second time we've seen that now in 2 games. Notre Dame cannot afford to throw away plays. This is not an offense that, again, they have to stay on schedule, which means you have to be gaining 4 yards a play. You've got to be just chunks, just methodical chunks down the field. You cannot have it's 2nd and 6, oops, bad snap, and now it's 3rd and 8. That's a drive killer. You cannot do that. And this is a team operating with very, very fine margins for error. And this is now a couple times we've seen those snaps be an issue, and that could be a drive killer for Notre Dame. And they can't afford to not have, they can't afford to waste a drive because there's a bad snap. And this is now 2 games in a row where we've seen that. That would be a, keep an eye on this one. That might be a big moment in this game.
For sure. Tom, before we go on, I just want to mention a sponsor, GratefulGriddleOH.com. Grateful Griddle is here to take your events to the next level, whether it's a wedding, a corporate event, or a birthday party. Their Columbus food truck catering serves up mouthwatering smash burgers, customizable menus, and unbeatable service. Head to GratefulGriddleOH.com and let them handle the flavor while you enjoy the fun. Smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, fresh, high-quality ingredients, all of the stuff that you love right there for you. So give them a look, GratefulGriddleOH.com. Tom, as I'm watching this, and I know Ohio State doesn't have Tyler Warren, I did see some areas where it wasn't just Tyler Warren in terms of the Penn State tight ends that were having some effectiveness. Khalil Dinkins had 2 catches for 21 yards in this one. Tyler Warren, 6 for 75. He's a different kind of cat, but watching the inability of the Penn State wide receivers to do anything, it's hard to go back and judge. Leonard Moore, who was just named the Defensive Freshman of the Year from the Football Writers Association of America on Wednesday, he will be matching up at times against Jeremiah Smith, who was just a regular freshman All-American, nothing special. So that will be an interesting matchup between those two. But the tight ends, I thought there was an area maybe there for some good stuff for Ohio State. I thought Penn State did a good job of spying Riley Leonard. Leonard, his long run of the day was just 6 yards. He was 18 of 35, but like I said, just 6 yards. I think it was was it the Georgia game where he had a 32-yarder in there, and so like they held him in check pretty good. And if Ohio State, if these are his numbers against Ohio State, one, I don't necessarily see a 15 for 23 for 223 yards passing for Riley Leonard against Ohio State. I could see 2 interceptions. I certainly see 3 sacks. But if they can hold him to 18 rushes for 35 yards, knowing that some of those are sacks, that's a winning day for me. But that third down is crazy. The third down in short yardage, if they're effective, they've been pretty effective. I think Georgia stopped them on a 4th and 1, stopped Riley Leonard on a 4th and 1. They never even needed to get to the 4th down. There were times where in this game, there was a drive or two where they didn't even have any third downs because they just, went right down the field. So, they can certainly get going. And one of my last notes here is Jeremiah Love's 2-yard touchdown run in this game we watched it live. One of the best runs you're ever going to see. That should have been a loss a number of times. I would put that up there with Braxton Miller's 2-yard touchdown run against Penn State, which Penn State fans do not like. This one is another, sorry, Penn State fans, incredible, hard-fought run from a guy who's not super healthy right now, is wearing a knee brace in this game, and just kept fighting and fighting. And that run to me is it's a microcosm of what Ohio State is going to face in this game. Just a complete fight all the way. Even if it's 21-0 in the second quarter, Notre Dame's going to keep fighting. I'm sorry. They're just going to keep, it may not go well for them, but they're not going to just roll over and give up like a Tennessee or an Oregon.
Yeah, it is definitely a team that, Lou Holtz talked about this on Wednesday, and it's, the Notre Dame culture and all that kind of stuff. And usually that's a little bit of a okay. But, you can see it. This team plays hard for Marcus Freeman. They really do. And it is not going to be an easy game for Ohio State, regardless of, what you think we think based on what we're saying on these shows. Ohio State is by far a more talented team than Notre Dame right now, especially given the injuries. That does not mean that it's going to be an easy game. I don't think either of us are picking Ohio State to win by 4 touchdowns or anything like that. This is a game where Notre Dame is going to fight till the very end. There were a couple things I had on my list just to hit real quick. Penn State was able to use tempo and the perimeter run game with great effect before halftime, even without the threat of a passing attack or wide receiver passing attack. I thought that was interesting. Probably look for some tempo from Ohio State, especially with a young defense, relatively young defense, where they have a lot of redshirt freshmen and sophomores and true freshmen out there who probably just don't have the reps, don't have the mental Rolodex, the experience to just know what's coming in a way that some of the more veteran guys in the Ohio State defense might. I think the Ohio State's going to be able to use tempo to some effect there. One of the things that Notre Dame pulled out, this is not the most creative thing, but they just ran a little end around to Jaden Thomas for 15 yards to convert a 3rd and 2. That's the kind of stuff they're going to have to do. That's kind of where the chunk plays may have to come from. They're going to have to get a little creative. There was Notre Dame, Al Golden. We've talked about the fact that I think Notre Dame's going to have to be very aggressive in this game. Al Golden brought a big blitz on the second play of the game, and Penn State hit him with a screen and picked up a nice big gain. I don't know. Ohio State's not a big screen team. Travion Henderson, 75-yarder against Texas aside. They've not run a ton of screens this year. I wonder if you see more of those, given that Al Golden does it feels like Al Golden's going to have to bring a lot of pressure. And then, speaking of young defenders, this is the second time we've seen Kingston Viliamuasa out there, true freshman linebacker, number 27. He's someone who, for all the world, looked like he was going to Ohio State and then ended up changing his mind and going to Notre Dame last year. He was out there and, playing like a meaningful minutes and had, I don't think he got credited for a sack, but he kind of forced a sack, flushed Drew Eller up into some other defenders. So he's a familiar name, familiar face to keep an eye on during this game on Monday.
he was Ohio State's first offer in the 2024 recruiting class. That's what they thought of him, and I think that was after his freshman or during his freshman year. You mentioned the receivers running the ball end around and things like that. That's where some of their best stuff has come from. Jordan Faison against Georgia had a 3-yarder, a 6-yarder, and then an 11-yarder that was called back. Jaden Thomas had a 7-yarder against Georgia. Against Penn State, Thomas had, as you said, an 18-yarder. So that will be part of this game and for Notre Dame and trying to go east-west and get outside the tackles. And it has worked okay for them of late. One of my Drew Aller ran the ball pretty well in this one. He was part of the running game for Penn State, and they rushed for 204 yards in this one. Drew Aller gained 25 yards on 5 carries, and you're watching him keep the ball on some reads, and you can imagine Will Howard certainly doing the same. So Penn State, Nick Singleton rushes for 84 yards, Katron Allen 82. They rushed for 204 yards, as I said, but 141 of those came in the first half. And then Penn State Notre Dame's defense stood up a little bit and kind of controlled them. And Tom, the last thing for me is a little bit of a trivia question. Do you know which wide receiver, because this will be the third time now that Notre Dame has played Ohio State in the past 3 years, so which wide receiver has the most career receiving yards against Ohio State in this game?
I saw this on Twitter, so I will let you share your fun fact, which is here's a hint. It's someone who's playing in this game, but it's not someone who's playing for Notre Dame.
Yeah, Lorenzo Styles, 54 yards receiving in his career against Ohio State. Jaden Greathouse, 2 catches for 40 yards, and Jaden Thomas, 1 catch for 7 yards in their respective careers. And boy, Lorenzo Styles and Jim Knowles, that's a duo that they met many years before they actually started playing on the same defense. Lorenzo Styles gets that first big play against Jim Knowles in 2022, and it's like, immediately a long touchdown, and that's when we were introduced to baking in big plays for the Jim Knowles defense, and right away, Lorenzo Styles was throwing a bun in the oven for that one, but he is now back with Ohio State, still leads all current and former Notre Dame wide receivers and career receiving yards. Tom, if he leaves this game still leading, boy, go ahead and chalk this one up for the Buckeyes as well.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the run stats and for the Orange Bowl, and Penn State outrushed Notre Dame by more than 2 yards per carry, 4.9 to 2.8. That's another one where if all you tell me is Ohio State outrushes Notre Dame by 2 yards per carry, I don't know what if you can like tease the line up to Ohio State minus 21 or something like that. But if Notre Dame gets outrushed by a couple of yards per carry, that's going to be a game where it hurts the TV ratings because people are turning the TV off and going, well, this game's over in the third quarter. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think Ohio State's going to be, I don't think Ohio State's going to run the ball quite that well. And I think Notre Dame's probably going to run the ball better than they did against Penn State. But yeah, there are going to be areas, we said this before, I'm going to say it again. There are going to be areas where Notre Dame has to figure something out because they are not going to be able to just out personnel Ohio State. They're going to have to draw some stuff up. They're going to have to get real creative. They are going to have to come up with several versions probably of the run the punt team on, run the punt team off thing they did against Georgia. Like, you're going to have to come up with some creative stuff to make stuff happen against Ohio State because the personnel right now, especially with the injuries, it's just, the Notre Dame is a very good team. Ohio State, if you look at the recruiting rankings, I think Ohio State has 12 5-star players on the roster and Notre Dame has 1. It's just not real comparable talent. And obviously 5-star recruits do not always equal superstar players. And yes, there are 3-star players who turn out to be great. We know that. The blue chip ratio stat from Bud Elliott, it does matter. It is relevant that you have, players who are kind of a little bit more athletic, a little bit bigger, a little bit faster. All of this stuff just means again, Notre Dame can win this game. No one is saying Notre Dame can't win this game, but Notre Dame's going to have to get real creative, and Notre Dame's going to have to make some stuff happen. Because if they don't, it's going to be a little bit of a war of attrition, and Ohio State's going to win that.
Yeah, they can absolutely win this game. And I know we keep talking about the advantages that Ohio State has. They do, but this isn't a game that Notre Dame can't win. They can absolutely win it. I was talking about this with somebody else, Tom. Last thing, on this Notre Dame team right now, who is definitely starting on Ohio State? Like, if you take this Notre Dame team, who among them is definitely starting on this Ohio State football team? And because, definitely starting, nobody.
Yeah,
let's talk. Maybe we can talk about the guards, but not with Rocco Spindler being banged up. Like,
yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. Mitch Jeter's been pretty good the last couple games, so that's something. But Jaden Fielding's been pretty good the last couple games, so yeah, I really don't have an answer for you. I mean, Xavier Watts is fantastic, but I don't. Who are you starting him ahead of Lathan Ransom or Caleb Dowd?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can have a conversation where it's like, oh, he's also really good, just like those guys are, but he's not clearly starting ahead of those guys. And, I'm sure there are Notre Dame fans who are going, these slappies probably pick Ohio State to win every game by 40 points. Like, go back and listen to us talk about we did these shows for like the Rose Bowl. So listen to us watch Oregon. And, there was stuff we're kind of nitpicking on Oregon, but it's, that was a game where the personnel was coming in, seemed like, boy, this is a, potentially a more similar personnel matchup. This is just, Notre Dame is really banged up right now, and really banged up in spots where they probably don't have, you would not choose to be banged up. You would not choose to lose your left tackle. You would not choose to lose your right tackle. You'd not choose to lose your star defensive end or defensive tackle. You'd not choose to have your running back be banged up, have a bad knee right now. All of those things, they don't have quite the level of replacement that Ohio State does. And Ohio State also lost a starting left tackle, also lost a Remington Award winner at center, but they've kind of been able to figure it out because the quality depth on the Ohio State roster is just a little bit higher than what it is on Notre Dame. And just the overall talent on the roster is just a little bit higher in Ohio State than it is on Notre Dame. And that's one of those things where you can overcome that, but you've got to really do something special. And we'll find out on Monday whether they can really do something special.
Yeah, for sure. You make the plays that are available to be made. You create some turnovers, which Notre Dame is very good at doing. You steal a possession or two. You win the middle eight. Like, all of these things, all of these pieces of the formula that Notre Dame has been successful with all season long, they could be successful again, because that's what they do. That's kind of just their identity. So you're going to have to expect them to be very capable of winning all of those little, I think Lorenzo Styles called it, like, there's some tug of war going on with Notre Dame, and there's going to be a ton of fight in this game, and I think we're all looking forward to it. So there you go. We've watched all three of Notre Dame's playoff games, and still would like to see more, which we probably will, but also we'll find out a whole heck of a lot on Monday night when Ohio State and Notre Dame finally kick off. So if you could hit the thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube before you go, we would appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. Hit the bell to be notified. We will be in Atlanta Friday, right away, almost tomorrow by the time that you're watching or listening to this. So looking forward to getting out there. And of course, you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com, where we will be talking about this game incessantly and productively, and X's and O's and intel and all sorts of good stuff like that. So you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. First month, just $4.99. And then we're going to be talking about everything afterwards as well. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.